Greetings, welcome, and thank you for clicking. I'm Christian of Standing Stones Healing Company, encouraging your journey with Reiki, card reading, and coaching for life's changes, challenges, and transitions. Thanks for joining me for this episode of Ask the Stones, offering spiritual guidance and encouragement for life's challenging questions. Greetings, welcome, and thank you for joining me for this episode of Ask the Stones. This week's question comes from Shelley. I read in your book that you were in an abusive relationship. I've been wondering if I'm in an abusive relationship. How can I tell if I'm being abused? Shelley. Well, Shelley, thank you for your question. And I want to say first, thank you so much for reading my new book, Standing Like the Stones. I'm assuming that's the book that you are talking about. This is my second book, my newest book, Standing Like the Stones. If you haven't read it yet and you're listening, definitely get that book. It is for free, and the link is in the notes section. So thank you so much, Shelley, for reading that book very much. I hope it is useful. As far as your question, I want to say thank you so much for bringing this question. I know that this is not an easy kind of question to ask, because I know that this is not an easy kind of scenario to consider. Wondering if you are in an abusive relationship is really not something that is easy to think about. And so I want to say thank you, Shelley, for your bravery and your courage in not only bringing this question forward, but just even in contemplating it. So I want to say thank you for that. I will talk about my experience and my experience in an abusive relationship. But what I want to first and foremost say is that even though I've had the experience, I am by no means an expert on abusive relationships. I am not the definitive answer on abusive relationships. There are way more people out there who know way more about this topic than I do. And so, Shelley, I hope this answer is helpful for you. I'll send Reiki, I'll pull some cards, and I want to encourage you to seek additional resources and information and support, because this answer will not be the end-all, be-all of abusive relationships. It can't be, because I just don't know enough about them for it to be. And even if I did know a lot about them, there's never one definitive answer for anything. So, Shelley, thank you. And please know that I'm going to provide you with all of the love and compassion and light that I can. And know that I really want you to seek additional assistance and support, including in the form of licensed mental and emotional health counseling, because they're going to really be able to sit down with you, chat with you, talk with you about your experiences and your feelings about them. Of course, I can support you in that journey with Reiki, card reading, and coaching. And those are a supplement for something like really big questions that have to do with things like abusive relationships, which we're getting into a really big and even scary and challenging topic, Shelley. So I'm going to do my best. As far as my experience with my abusive relationship, I mention it in the book. I just mention that I had an abusive relationship, and I don't go into the details. And that's not because I'm embarrassed by them or don't want to talk about them. It's just because, I don't know that people necessarily want to hear about it, or that it's the most helpful to talk about all of the details of that experience. Just like in that book, I don't go into any detail in any of my life change experiences. But yes, I was in an abusive relationship, and that has been many years now. Let me add up the years here very quickly, Shelley. It's been 13 years, 12 years, something like that. So, I've worked through a lot with that experience. I don't have the same kinds of emotional responses to it that I had for several years after the experience. And so it is something that I can talk about really without any emotional heaviness or baggage or anything like that attached to it. So I feel really thankful for that. But my experience was one in which I never thought that I would be in an abusive relationship. This wasn't anything that ever occurred to me. I'm a confident kind of person. I'm a nice person. I mean, of course, quote, bad things happen to good people, right? And so it just never occurred to me that I would be in a quote unquote abusive relationship. And as a matter of fact, Shelley, it was not until I was out of the relationship and I was getting counseling for getting out of that relationship. I know I mentioned in the book that I did seek out professional mental health counseling to help me stay out of the relationship and not go back. But it was not until I was seeing a mental health counselor and discussing my experience that I was informed that I had been in an abusive relationship. So it wasn't anything that I knew about, that I realized I was in an abusive relationship. I mean, I'm a man and I was in a hetero relationship with a woman. And, we don't too frequently hear about men being in abusive relationships with women. But I was, and I didn't even realize that that's what was happening to me at the time. So what happened for me? How did I tell that I was in an abusive relationship? I did not know. I didn't realize. I knew that the relationship didn't feel good. I knew that it was unhealthy. I knew that I was afraid of my partner emotionally. I'll get into a little bit more about that in a minute, Shelley. But as far as knowing that I was in an abusive relationship, I didn't. It wasn't until I was out of the relationship and talking to my mental health counselor and talking to him about what occurred in the relationship. And he said to me, "What you've just described to me is domestic violence." And my jaw dropped and I said, "What?" What? Domestic violence? What? And he said, yeah, he informed me that I was in an abusive relationship. And I never would have realized that on my own. And so, Shelley, in that relationship, I couldn't tell that I was in an abusive relationship. I didn't know. I had to have someone else tell me. So that was my experience in understanding and being able to tell. Now, when I looked back on the relationship and reflected on it, I could see the kinds of things that would make it an abusive relationship and make it domestic violence. And before I go into what those were, I do just want to throw out a quick note here, everyone, that abusive relationships are not confined to any particular kind of gender or orientation or type of relationship. Abusive relationships occur across all genders, all sexualities, even all kinds of relationships. And so abusive relationships are not confined to love relationships. They occur in all different kinds of ways. And so I really want to encourage us to release any notions that we have about what an abusive relationship is supposed to look like. Because, I had an image in my mind of what an abusive relationship looked like, and that did not match with my relationship. And so I never would have put my relationship into that box. But I had created a box. I think we do create a box of what an abusive relationship looks like culturally. And so I really want to encourage us to expand that notion, because they do occur across all genders, all sexualities, all types of relationships. So you very well could be in an abusive relationship, Shelley, just based on the fact that they do occur in all different kinds of ways. So what were the signs for me as I reflected on it? Well, once I got into the relationship, I saw the red flags in terms of, very early on, in terms of the control, the chaotic kinds of things that would be done to create chaos. And there were red flags, and I was like, oh my gosh, what did I get myself into? What have I gotten myself into? And I do want to say right here and right now that we cannot know a thing completely unless we are in it. And so oftentimes in an abusive relationship, we will say to ourselves, I should have known. I should have known. How did I not know? And this is not only abusive love relationships, but also, maybe buying a product, and we are kind of wowed by the flashy advertising and the too good to be true. And then we buy a product and we're like, oh, this is not what I wanted. And I should have known. I should have known. No, actually, there's no way that you can completely know a thing until you are in it. And so sometimes with relationships, you cannot completely know if someone is going to be abusive until you are in it. And so I really want to encourage all of us to not blame ourselves for getting ourselves into situations and then saying things like, oh, I should have known. How could I not have known? I should have known. Sometimes we just can't know until we're in it. Now, of course, sometimes there are plenty of signs, and oftentimes we will give the other person, the product, the job, the boss, the benefit of the doubt. And oftentimes we want to see the good in people and things. And so we will kind of brush off certain red flags. And maybe those red flags are really not red flags. And maybe things really do work out okay, and they're not what we expect or are afraid of based on those red flags. So that is all a possibility. And we will sometimes brush off those red flags because we want to believe in people. We want to believe in experiences and circumstances. And so we very well may do that. I want to encourage all of us not to beat ourselves up for that, because we're human. And we do those things, and we're going to continue to do those things because we are human. But so oftentimes we cannot really know a thing until we get into it. You accept the job, and you pack up your bags and you move, relocate for the job, and the job turns out to be not what you really wanted or expected. It's okay. You could not have known that from a distance. You could not have known that completely unless you took the job. You could not have known exactly what it would be like unless you were in it. With the relationship, Shelley, if you are indeed in an abusive relationship, you could not know that. You could not have known that unless you were in it fully. Now, like I said, there are red flags. It's important to be on the lookout for those red flags and to trust that intuition. And, when you get into situations where you are beating yourself up, oh, I should have known, I should have known. Yeah, sometimes you need to get into something to realize that it's not for you. So I encourage all of us to release judgment of ourselves for the decisions that we make. We are indeed human. So what that means, Shelley, is that I don't beat myself up for getting into that relationship, because did I have red flags at the beginning? Yes, I did. Did I have reasons for ignoring them? Yes. Did I stay anyway? I did. And I couldn't have known how bad it would be until I was in it. So, the things that I saw, those red flags, the creating of the chaos and the control and manipulation was really a big one of my emotions. I didn't get out of it because I was afraid of what she might do. I was afraid of what she might do. Now, I never feared for my physical safety, Shelley. And I will say, if you fear for your physical safety in this relationship, yes, this is not a safe relationship. Get out. Get out. Get out. I don't care whatever your reasons are for staying. If you do not feel physically safe, get out. And there is plenty of support out there for you while you do that, but get out now. Do not hesitate. Do not wait if you do not feel physically safe. But I never had any concerns about that myself. I did not fear for my physical safety. I feared for the safety of my property. I feared for her safety. I feared for the safety of my reputation. We had a lot of mutual friends, knew a lot of people in common, and I saw her every day in the office. We worked together. And so I really feared for my reputation and what might happen to it. So, I had reasons for not immediately jumping out, not jumping ship. And, as we went about our relationship, it just kind of became the norm. The chaos, the frequent breakups, the emotional manipulations, my fear of saying the wrong thing, those all just became the norm. It was just the norm. And when something becomes normal, you don't realize the effect that it has on you. When something becomes normal, you don't really realize how it's impacting you. So it's like this, Shelley. There was one point in my life where I was helping to clear away invasive species, invasive vines from a forest, and I was helping to cut away these vines that were all wrapped around these young trees and making impressions upon the young trees with their tangling vines. And as I cut them away, I could almost feel the trees sighing and saying, ah. But the message that I received from the trees was that they didn't even realize that they were being suffocated. They didn't even realize that their growth was so inhibited and impaired. I received the same kind of a message from a tree while out hiking on a trail. A sign had been nailed into the side of the tree, an arrow pointing, the trail goes this way. And the tree had grown around the sign so that the sign was embedded in the tree. And I asked the tree, I said, does it hurt? And the tree said no, it didn't even notice it anymore. And that's the way that it can become with unhealthy and abusive relationships. It just becomes the norm. And we don't even realize that it's this foreign object stuck in our trunk that doesn't belong there. It has become part of us. So it just became the norm in the relationship. Of course, it took an emotional toll that turned into a physical toll. I was having, after 2 years of being in the relationship, I was having terrible stomach pains. I attributed them to a life change that I was experiencing. I attributed them to other stressors. No, I know now that it had to do, yes, of course, those other stressors and life changes, of course, had an impact. But I'm positive now that the major contributor to that physical illness was that relationship, that unhealthy relationship that was chronically stressful to the point where I didn't even realize how stressful it was. It was just the norm. And so, Shelley, in a relationship that may be abusive, we may have a really hard time recognizing that just because that experience becomes the relationship. It is the relationship. It's how we identify with and relate to the relationship. So definitely be on the lookout, Shelley, for things like, definitely those physical manifestations, but that very well may come at a later time. But things like feeling the need to watch what you say, walking on, like you need to walk on eggshells, emotional ups and downs and turbulence, control and manipulation. Definitely not just controlling emotions, but controlling your possessions, controlling money, controlling who you spend time with, controlling how you spend your time. Things like, if you love me, then you'll blank. I heard that. If you love me, then you just need to accept me the way that I am. Be on the lookout for things like that, Shelley. Now, if you're thinking, oh my gosh, those things are happening, am I in an abusive relationship? Maybe yes, maybe no. Maybe simply an unhealthy relationship. How do you know the difference? I think that there's a really fine line. And even if the relationship is not abusive, but it is unhealthy, get out. There is no reason to be in an unhealthy relationship. And as a matter of fact, after that experience, I determined that I was done with unhealthy relationships. That relationship was so unhealthy that I just said, that's it. I need to improve all of my relationships. I need to cut out the relationships that are not healthy. And the ones that I want to keep, I need to work to make those healthy. And so, Shelley, even if your relationship is not abusive and it's unhealthy, you've got 2 options: improve it or leave. And whichever you choose is up to you. But you want to make sure that you do some real reflection on it. And I think that reflection is best done with a lot of support and assistance. So definitely get that support and assistance. And of course, things like Reiki and card reading can help you. Coaching can help you as well. And definitely when we're talking about abusive relationships and abuse, I definitely advocate getting a mental and emotional support in the form of a licensed counselor. And using other things like Reiki, card reading, coaching, whatever other modalities you might like, or resources that you'd like to try as a support, as a supplement. And know that when we talk about abusive relationships, we're talking about some pretty important stuff. So definitely, if you are wondering if you are in an abusive relationship, I want to encourage you, Shelley, to reach out and get some support from a licensed counselor on that. I will also say, Shelley, how do you know? How can you tell if you're being abused? How do you know if you're in an abusive relationship? It's kind of like this. If you are asking this kind of question, you're already wondering. And if you're already wondering, then the chances are that you very well may be, and you very well may already know the answer to that deep down inside. Shelley, I once received a question for Ask the Stones about how do you know when it's time to leave a relationship? And my immediate answer was, when you're asking this question. And so for you, Shelley, how do you know if you're in an abusive relationship? Asking this question can be an indication, because when we ask questions like this, oftentimes we have already been contemplating it, thinking about it, and maybe already have some inklings, but have yet to admit it and have yet to really deeply explore that, but we already know the answer. So Shelley, I am not going to say, yes, you are in an abusive relationship because you're asking this question, but oftentimes the questions themselves are the answers. So asking the question is sometimes itself the answer. So I really want to encourage you to do some contemplation, Shelley, on why you're asking the question, what's leading you to ask the question, what you are seeing in your relationship that points to it as abusive. And ultimately, Shelley, there's a whole checklist. There are multiple checklists of all of the things about abusive relationships. And you can go down that checklist and you can check them all. You can check some or you can check none. That doesn't matter. What really matters is how you feel, your experience of the relationship. My big question is, Shelley, is this a fulfilling relationship? Is this a relationship that you enjoy? Is this a relationship that fills you up? Is this a relationship that is helping you to grow and expand as a human? Is this a positive relationship? And if the answer is no, it doesn't matter if it's abusive or not in terms of getting out. So I do encourage contemplating that and getting out, because even if it's not abusive, if it's unhealthy, definitely it's not right. I encourage all of us to have healthy relationships that fill us up, that help us to grow, that are mutually fulfilling and beneficial. And if they're not, for us to work on them. But if they are so unhealthy that it's a true challenge, then it's okay to let it go. It's okay to leave. It's okay to say, no, I don't want to work on this. And with my relationship that I finally left after she broke up with me for the last time, and every time, she'd call me up, oh, I'm so sorry. Oh, well, actually, she wouldn't even say I'm sorry. Never mind. But, it was almost like a given, like, of course, I'd take her back. And or of course we were still together even though she'd just broken up with me. And this last time, she got very angry that I said no. And she was just an angry person. Can you believe that, Shelley? I am such a happy, positive person. I was in a relationship with a very angry person. And so that was not a relationship that I wanted to work on. I hit an emotional wall and I just had to get away. I had to get away from her. I had to get out of that relationship. It was not anything that I wanted to work on, or looking back on it now, it wasn't anything that could have been worked on. So I feel very positive in my decision to just get out and get away. Only you can know, Shelley, what is really the best for you. And if you do indeed attempt to extricate yourself from this relationship, I encourage you to seek support in all kinds of ways, because it does take a lot of support on all kinds of fronts. I encourage you not to judge yourself. I encourage you not to beat yourself up for getting yourself into this situation. And I encourage you to be gentle with yourself through this process. I know for me it was a process. You know, the first time we broke up, nope, didn't say no, took her back. Second time, third time, fourth time, fifth time. I think it was 6 times. I don't know. I'd lost count. Every few months, it was like clockwork. But it was the kind of thing where it was a process. It needed to be worked out. I needed to, I guess, come to an emotional wall to be able to say that's it, that's enough, and to have it all just come crumbling down. I mean, like, really, I hit an emotional wall. Like, it was just, I'd like nothing I've ever experienced, Shelley. Now, I'm not saying that's how it's going to be for you if you leave this relationship, but what I'm saying is that it is a process. And to be gentle with yourself if it takes you time to extricate yourself. I think so often, this is one thing I learned from my abusive relationship. And I would do that relationship all over again just to learn this. That so often we judge people in abusive relationships. So often we say, ugh, I can't believe why she's still with him. Why is she not out? Ugh, and we just hurl all kinds of judgment at the person in the abusive relationship and really blame them for going back, for not getting out. And I say her because this really is most frequently a hetero relationship with an abusive male and a female who is being abused. But we so often judge her and feel disgusted by her continuing to go back or to stay with him or whatever the case might be. And so I learned through that experience, through my own abusive relationship, that what we really need to do for people in those situations is to not judge them, and to support them and love them and give them compassion and understanding and support and encouragement to leave, but that we don't judge them for the fact that it is a process, for the challenges that they experience in trying to extricate themselves. I also want to encourage you, Shelley, that if you are indeed in an abusive relationship, these do have effects on us that can and do outlast the relationship itself. So that once you are out and free and away, it does not mean that the emotional toll is over. It took me a full year until I was able to really get back to myself in a sense, and to feel like I could date again, and to feel stable. And so know that, and of course to work through all of the abuse. So know, Shelley, that if you are indeed in an abusive relationship, once you're out of it, it can take time to work through and process all of the emotions, all of the abuse, the trauma of that experience. So even after you're out of it, I want to encourage, and out of it for good, because remember, it can be a real process, but that even once you are out of it for good, processing the experience and working through it can take some time. So I want to encourage you to be gentle with yourself with that as well, and to know that that too is a process. And of course, Shelley, things like Reiki especially can be really helpful for you as you work on that process. So, Shelley, I'm going to send some Reiki to you for your experience, whether you are in an abusive relationship or not, whether you are in an unhealthy relationship or not. I want to send Reiki to you, and to support you at this time as you contemplate your experience and seek additional support. Take a look at those abusive relationship checklists, but know that even if you don't check all the boxes, it doesn't mean that your relationship isn't abusive, and it doesn't mean it's not healthy, and it does not mean you should stay. So, please join me in taking 3 deep cleansing breaths. And for all those who are listening, I'm going to send Reiki to all of our relationships, because remember, even non-romantic relationships can be abusive and can be unhealthy. And I truly believe it's important for all of us to have and maintain and work at having healthy relationships, whether with partners or family members or friends or siblings or whatever. So, thank you, Shelley, for the honor of sending you Reiki. And Shelley, I do want to say that as I began sending Reiki, I saw the image of a book. And the message here was clear. This was a journal, and the encouragement to journal about this experience. I don't know, Shelley, if you journal or not, but writing down your thoughts and feelings can really help you to peel away the layers of them and to work through them. And I will say from my own personal experience, during that relationship, I was really not journaling very much. I had been journaling. I've been journaling since I was 20 or 21. And journaling regularly, but during that relationship, I was not. And looking back on it now, I'm positive that I was not, because I was afraid to think too deeply about my feelings and to confront them and to work through them, because doing so would have really led me to some really deep stuff about my relationship, about my feelings about it, about how unhealthy it was, and about how I just needed to get out of it. for myself. Whatever the repercussions, ramifications might be, and whatever kind of reputation turmoil there might be. It just, I think, wasn't something I wanted to confront. And so I really want to encourage you, Shelley, to consider maybe doing some journaling about this relationship and your feelings and thoughts about it. I know that for me, once the relationship was over, I really got right back to journaling again. And journaling was very helpful for me. I have found that with journaling, when I resist it is when I really need it. And so when I was resisting journaling during that relationship, that's when I really could have benefited from it and really needed it to explore my feelings and really contemplate my experience. So that may be something you want to consider as well, Shelley. So I'm going to pull some cards for you. I'm called to draw an Archangel card. So we're going to draw an Archangel card and see what comes up. Oops, here it is. Victory. Interesting. Archangel Sandalphon says, your prayers have been heard and answered. Have faith. Okay, so what I'm getting in terms of this idea of victory, the victory is the prayer itself. The victory is asking for help through prayer. The victory is turning for assistance. And so, Shelley, I think the victory of this card is about you contemplating this, asking this question. I think it's a real victory that you asked this question. And know that the angels are supporting you at this time. Know that they are there to assist you. Your guides are here. I encourage you, they encourage you to call upon them and to know that they are here to support you. I'm going to pull also a Breathe Easy card for you. And let's see what kind of maybe mantra might be beneficial for you at this time and what guidance we might receive. Yes, Shelley, it is a real challenge to ask a question like this. So I want to say thank you for your bravery. And I want to say thank you for your courage in asking this question. And who knows who else it may help, Shelley. We never know who else may be struggling with the questions that we have and who else they may help. The Breathe Easy card that has jumped out of the deck for you is I Am Energy. We are all made of the same energy, an ancient spiritual truth rediscovered by modern science. I breathe in the pure energy that powers the stars. I am filled with the primal power that brings everything into being. I breathe out obstacles to my energy's flow. Yep. Shelley, what I'm getting from this card is that you have the support of not only the angels and spirit guides, but the stars. The very stars are here to support you. And for me, anytime I have challenges and troubles in my life, I always find it so empowering to go look at the stars and to see them shining above and to know that they have come way before me and they are going to last way long after me. And when I look at the stars, my challenges always seem so small, Shelley, in comparison. To say, wow, look at those amazing stars. Look how they shine down on us. Look at all of the things that they have outlived. and look at all of the things that they will outlive and how fleeting is all of this. And that doesn't make me feel defeated as if to say, oh, gee, I'm going to die. That sucks. But rather to say, yeah, this challenge that I'm having, this is just a drop in the vast bucket of this cosmic revelation. And so know, Shelley, that you've got the stars supporting you. You've got cosmic wind supporting you. You've got Reiki and Chi, Prana, anything that you might identify with supporting you. Know that all of that flows through you as well, and that you do have the power. If you determine to leave this relationship, which if you are in one, Shelley, it may very well be the right thing for you to do. Know that you have the power within you. You do not need to look outside for the power. Support, yes, support is always helpful. And sometimes we just need support in reminding us that we have the power. And you do, Shelley, you do have the power to leave any relationship that is abusive, whether this one is or not, whether you're in an abusive relationship or not. You always have the power to get yourself out of anything. So I send you blessings, Shelley, and I send you best wishes, and I send blessings and best wishes to all of us. I send us blessings for healthy, happy, fulfilling relationships. Thank you so much. I send you blessings and best wishes for your journey. Thanks for tuning in to this episode of Ask the Stones. If you have a question for Ask the Stones, please send me an email at christian@standingstoneshealing.com or connect with me on Facebook at Standing Stones Healing. Thank you, and best wishes for your journey.